What's up, y'all? One Piece, One Life here, and guys, I think it's time for a theory, specifically a void century theory. Cause see, ever since chapter 1114 came out, I've been having ideas just collating in my mind. And before now, I never really had a chance to tie everything together. But with the latest chapter, I definitely can. Specifically with the information that Joy Boy was the first pirate, which tells us straight from that one sentence a lot about the world. So we're gonna just dive right into it and explain my One Piece Void Century theory. But before we start, guys, please y'all know what to do. Like the video, subscribe to the channel for more One Piece content just like this, and share it around with all your friends who love the series. Let's get it going. So the theory, in a nutshell, can be summarized by this sentence. The One Piece is/was, to some degree at least, a supercontinent. We know that the One Piece treasure is going to be like, doubloons and all that. Oda already said that. But I think part of the appeal of it is being one huge landmass that ends up being split up. See, the fact that Joy Boy was the first pirate seems to strongly indicate that there were no islands before Joy Boy set out. Now this makes sense if the world was just one huge landmass, because if it was, there wouldn't be any incentive to, sail anywhere, because there was nowhere else to sail to in the world. So maybe because this is all one piece of land, that's where something about the One Piece has to do with it. Now if you take this theory that I made a while back into consideration, which posits that Joy Boy is a giant, which you should definitely watch after this video, then that means that just by nature of his race, Joy Boy has close ties to the giants, and potentially even specifically the ancient giants. That's going to become important in just a moment. Now see, Oars died 500 years ago, and he was the one that they called the continent puller. But there is no reason to think that he was the only continent puller ever in history, or that there weren't continent pullers before him. So this is where the major part of the theory comes into play, which is that Joy Boy, through some communication with the giants or working together with them, was able to pull apart the one huge supercontinent into many islands and scatter them across the world. And he asked the giants to do this for reasons that we are not entirely sure of, but I do have some options. Maybe, and this goes along with him potentially bearing the will of D, or even starting the will of D, he just really wanted to be free, and he believed that sailing the ocean and exploring was the only true way to do that. But with one huge supercontinent, there was no incentive to actually do that. So he's the one who wanted the world to be split. Maybe he knew of something special that would happen if he ended up splitting the world. Like, for example, maybe something was hidden deep down that could only be revealed after he pulled all of the islands separate. But this one is the one I'm leaning towards the most. Maybe he even had to, for some reason, with the intention of putting it back together one day. What that is, I think it definitely has to do with the world government, or I guess at least as they were known back then, which is just the alliance of the 20 kings. Potentially, if they definitely had whatever that weapon that Emu has now, that he's able to nuke entire islands and make the water levels rise, if they kept doing that, maybe he realized, oh, these need to be split apart so that not everything just gets completely submerged. And it makes me wonder, is this what the apology to the mermaid princess is about? That Joy Boy had made a promise that he would bring them to the surface because they used to live on the supercontinent, but after the islands got pulled apart, they were forced down? And yes, you have to accept some auxiliary things in order for it to make sense, but I mean, the mermaids living on the surface in ancient times and then having to be moved down with the promise of one day being moved back up, I think that makes sense. Because think about it. We already know that there are concepts and things from the ancient world that are more advanced or lost through the annals of history and are only now reappearing. If you want an example, just take a look at the technology that Vegapunk has access to, and then us learning that the ancient kingdom had potentially even more advanced things than what Vegapunk is doing right now. So yeah, I think that it makes sense that if the world government or 20 kings or whatever you want to call them are coming in, threatening to use that huge sky laser, raising everything to try and submerge the people to, put the world under their control, Joy Boy thinks, alright, time to split everyone up so that everyone can, in their own way, remain safe. Which may also play into a bit of what I talked about at the end of my chapter batch review. Each different race seems to have a way or mechanism of surviving the rising tides. Now, another plus for this theory is that we know that Joy Boy had a whole diverse cast of friends. So it being one supercontinent where everyone lived together, it makes sense where Joy Boy would find all these people. Then, of course, he'd have to split them up with the promise of all of them coming back together one day. Now, this also calls back to the skull that is Onigashima, because imagine, Kaido was able to fit an entire fortress in the head of this thing. So if this is just the head, imagine how big the body must have been when it was back alive. Something like that could easily pull continents apart. I think that it's not irrelevant that Kaido chose Onigashima specifically, especially when he himself seems to have some sort of ancient giant blood or heritage in him. Then there's even the point to consider when Big Mom was falling, when she said, part of the One Piece, something about it has to do with the Wano country, doesn't it, Roger? Which a lot of people tied that back to, you know, the ancient weapon Pluton sleeping under Wano. But what if it also, or partly, had to do with the skull? And who knows, maybe that's even what they were trying to do when they were recreating the numbers, because we know that the numbers haven't become relevant since they were made. But maybe this is the plot point that ties them back into the story. But the big key thing about this theory is that it still has to pan out. Joy Boy's vision still has to become realized. And this is how I think it ties into Luffy's dream. Now, anyone who's reading the series more than casually knows that becoming the king of the pirates is not Luffy's dream. At least, it's not his true dream. It's his goal that will then enable his dream. And like many people across the web, I believe that his true dream is bringing everyone in the world together for just one big party. Now, if you believe, like me, that Luffy wants to unite the world through a party, then it would make sense that he would need to physically unite the world by recreating that landmass, pulling all the islands back together to form at least part of the supercontinent, so that that is one landmass that everyone can share the feast on. It would also make sense as to why Roger and his crew said that they were too early, because it requires Joy Boy's return and perhaps machinations of the Nika Nika no Mi that Luffy has. I mean, we see Luffy multiple times turn himself into a giant, so who knows, maybe that has something to do with himself being the one to start pulling islands together. If anyone could do it at this point, it's Luffy. I think that the Toon Force logic, I could definitely see Luffy even just creating a lasso from nowhere and start tugging on islands. We know that towing islands is possible. Not only did the ancient giants do it, but Momonosuke did it with Onigashima too. And maybe that's why Super Elephant and the Iron G were waiting for Joy Boy to return, because they knew that with his return, it means the return of the continent, the world that they once knew and they longed for from the past. And as a final extra push, just remember that we're going to Elbaf next. So if there was ever a time to learn more about the ancient giants, Joy Boy, how they all relate, it's definitely within the next year and a half or so. But there we have it, guys. That's just my small theory on how the One Piece world ends up, essentially. Do you guys think that Luffy has the strength or capabilities of smushing the world back into one supercontinent? Or do you have another theory on how the world used to look like, or what's gonna happen to it in the future? Let me know all that good stuff and more in the comments. Now that's the end of the video, y'all, but guys, please, y'all know the drill. Like the video, subscribe to the channel for more One Piece content just like this. Turns out, I love making theories, and share it around with all your friends who love the series. Remember, I'm trying to make a community, but I need your help to do it. Well, that's gonna be all from me. I'll catch y'all in the next one, and always remember, One Piece, one life. Man, ever since we entered the final saga, we've just been getting bombshell drop after bombshell drop. You can tell that Oda is racing towards the end of this story. I mean, genuinely, I never thought that we'd be in an era where we could even start thinking about getting Void Century stuff, but here we are, and we gotta love it while it's still here, okay?